Hi, I am Callen, the daughter who had her face slapped in front of 50 people while my brother clapped and my father smirked from his chair. Shocking it should be. That night I realized it was never about love. It was about control money and making sure I stayed small enough to be used, but never seen. My family called it tradition. I call it betrayal. And just when I thought I had nothing left, an envelope arrived. Inside it was not a threat, but proof. Proof of forged signatures, secret accounts, and a decade-long lie. "Do you even care what this does to me?" my sister screamed through the phone. I answered calmly, "No, Ellis. I care about what it finally does to the truth. What would you do if your own blood tried to erase you from your life and you suddenly held the evidence that could burn their empire down?" Before we go on, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We bring you new stories every day. Hit like and let us know what city you're watching from in the comments. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter like it did not quite belong there. Cream-colored, heavyweight paper gold embossed lettering. My sister Ellis had always loved that kind of presentation, caring far more about the aesthetics than the actual substance. I stood staring at it for a few long seconds before I even reached for the letter opener. It had been 6 long months since anyone from my family had spoken to me. Not a word, no calls, not even one of those shallow hope you are well texts. The last time I was in that house, Ellis screamed that I thought I was better than everyone else just because I would not invest in her failing luxury fashion line. I left that night with the echo of slammed doors and sharp accusations ringing in my ears. And now this. Inside was an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner, handwritten in her perfect script. "Dear Callen, we hope you will join us for a special Thanksgiving gathering. 3:00 p.m., family home. Love me." Love, huh? I let out a soft scoff. My hands did not shake because of nerves. They trembled from everything that had built up in silence, things that had never been spoken, never been apologized for. I sat down at the edge of my worn kitchen chair, letters still open in my lap, and tried to decide what felt worse, staying away or going back. Part of me knew it could be a setup. I would not be surprised if I walked in and found some passive-aggressive performance waiting. But another part of me, the part that used to curl into my mum's lap after bad dreams, that once helped my dad tile the garage floor, that sewed Ellis's prom dress in 3 nights when her seamstress cancelled that part, wondered, what if this meant something? Closure does not always come wrapped in kindness. My therapist said that once, and it stuck. I booked a train ticket that night, the 9:05 a.m., Northeast Regional, arriving just after noon in New Jersey. I chose a red vintage dress from my closet. My mother always said it made me look cheap, like a political wife trying too hard. I wore it anyway. With my hair in a soft twist and a coat I had not used since last winter, I felt strangely like I was preparing for battle. The ride felt longer than usual. Maybe it was the heavy grey sky outside, or the woman across from me sobbing quietly into a Starbucks napkin. I did not ask. We all carry our reasons in silence. By the time I arrived, the neighborhood looked just as manicured as it always had. Lawns trimmed identical cars in identical driveways. When I stepped up to the familiar white door, I noticed something that made my throat catch. The little wooden welcome sign above the porch. Ellis had replaced it. It used to read, "The Blanchards all are welcome." Now it read, "Family first always." The door swung open before I knocked. A man in a white shirt and black vest stood there holding a tablet. "Name please," he asked with a neutral tone. "Callen," I said, voice flat. He tapped something, then motioned me in. No hug, no warm hand squeeze like Mum used to do, just protocol. As I walked in, the scent of roasted turkey and rosemary drifted through the house, familiar, almost comforting, until I saw the seating chart taped to the side of the buffet cabinet. Ellis had Alden beside Mum, beside Dad, opposite guest, far left guest. No name, just guest. I swallowed down the heat rising in my chest and handed my coat to another staffer, not a family member. No one looked up. No one said, "Oh, Callen, you made it." The first face I recognized was Ellis's. She walked toward me like a stage actress about to make a grand entrance, arms outstretched, lips stretched in a perfect, polished smile. "Oh, look who showed up," she announced, loud enough for the room to turn and look. There was laughter, light, tight, uncomfortable. Dad gave a quick nod from his armchair and did not move. just sat there, legs crossed, glass in hand. Alden, my brother, walked right past me, said nothing, and grabbed a deviled egg off a tray. I made my way to the only empty chair tucked behind the buffet table, farthest from the fireplace. I sat quietly, hands folded, and waited for the awkwardness to pass. But it never did. Conversations swirled around me like I was not even there. Small talk jokes about Alden's promotion, someone's kid getting into Cornell. Not a single word directed at me. Dinner was served just before 4. The turkey looked perfect. The stuffing smelled exactly like it did when I was 15, sneaking bites off the stovetop when Mum was not looking. Plates clinked, glasses lifted. Everyone seemed too rehearsed. As I reached for the cranberry sauce, I felt it before I saw it. Every eye turning subtly toward the head of the table. My mother stood her chair creaking beneath her as she rose with a kind of practiced poise. She tapped her fork once against the rim of her wineglass. Clink, twice. Clink, clink. Then she looked at me. Not past me, not near me, at me. Her eyes sharp, narrowed, like she was about to deliver a verdict. And I knew this was not just a toast. The sound of her fork tapping the glass still rang in my ears when she smiled that hostess smile, the kind that stretched wide but never truly softened. Everyone, my mother began standing tall at the head of the table. Before we dive into dessert, I want to say a few words. The room hushed. Even the clinking of silverware stopped. 50-some people turned toward her wineglasses lifted in their hands. I stayed silent back straight, trying not to look as tense as I felt. I look around this room. She continued sweeping her hand like a performer on stage, and I see loyalty, I see tradition, and I see family who understands that respect must be earned, never assumed. My stomach tightened. Her voice carried across the dining room, lilting with warmth for the crowd, but razor-sharp to me. In every family, she said, there comes a time when we must remind ourselves who we are, where we come from, and more importantly, what we owe each other. She paused, letting her words settle heavy in the air. I could feel eyes grazing me like heat from a stovetop. Because sometimes, she said softly, some daughters forget. A low, polite chuckle rumbled through the table. My wineglass remained untouched. I felt my palms go cold. They forget, she went on, that humility is a virtue, that success means nothing if you carry arrogance like perfume. That family is not an obligation, it is an honor. She did not look at me directly anymore. She did not need to. Everyone knew who she was talking about. Money does not buy you roots, she said, a syrupy smile forming. And it certainly does not buy you love or respect. Another chuckle. Alden snorted, clearly enjoying himself because entitlement always fed his ego. She took a deep breath, savoring the finale. Entitlement is ugly, especially on family. That is when Alden clapped. 1, 2, 3, slow claps. His smirk carved across the room. That is Mum's best one yet, he muttered. Just loud enough. Ellis looked away, swirling her wine, pretending to focus on a cranberry garnish. Dad did not move a muscle. I sat still like a statue in red, trapped in a room that once held birthday parties and game nights and genuine laughter. Now it was just a stage for my public shaming. I pushed back my chair gently and stood. I did not say a word, just slid my napkin off my lap and laid it neatly on the plate. I made it 2 steps before it happened. The sound cracked through the room, a hand against my face, hard, immediate. The left side of my cheek lit up like fire. It took me a second to realize she had done it. My mother, her fingers still outstretched, her eyes wide, not with shock but with satisfaction. Gasps erupted around the room, but no one moved. My wineglass slipped from my hand, hit the marble, and shattered. The sound echoed through the dead silence. Dad finally spoke from his seat, never looked up. Serves you right. I looked at him, looked at her, looked at the faces I used to know. Now frozen, ashamed, some smug. Alden shifted in his chair, but did not stand. Ellis sipped her wine again, like this was all background noise. And I did not cry. I turned and walked out of the room. No rush, no dramatic pause. Just left through the hallway that used to smell like cinnamon. Past the family photos that stopped including me 5 years ago. Past the coat rack I built in high school. Shop class out the front door. The November air slapped against my cheek, now burning in more ways than one. But I did not reach for it. I did not need to. That sting reminded me. This was real. I sat on the porch steps, just wood under my legs and silence in the cold. No one followed me, not a soul, not one voice calling out, not even to pretend. That is when it hit me. Not like a knife, but like a slow truth finally stepping into the light. I had not lost my family. I never had them. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone, and my hand was steady. I scrolled down to the bottom. 3 names I had never thought I would use again. Each one burned like a match in the dark. I tapped the first one. It rang once, twice. Then came the voice, low, knowing. I have been expecting your call. I did not smile, just exhaled quietly and leaned back against the kitchen counter, the edge pressing into my spine. Merit, I said, my voice even. It is time. A pause. Then, with that same calm cadence I always admired in him, he replied, I take it the situation has escalated. You could say that. I need you to activate the contingency we discussed 2 years ago, the trust freeze full scope, and file the injunction. We block every single channel they could move money through. I heard the sound of papers being shifted. He was already working. You still have temporary power of attorney over your mother per the amendment we filed during her recovery. She never revoked it. She did not know how he said, almost amused. And your father was too arrogant to check. You are still the legal gatekeeper, Callen. I closed my eyes. Then file it, and Merit make sure it hits by morning. Quietly, no media, no mess. You know me, he said smoothly, I work in shadows. We ended the call there. No pleasantries, no good lucks, just mutual understanding. I set my phone on the counter and walked into the living room. My place was modest. 2-bedroom hardwood floors, bookcases that still smelled faintly like old paperbacks. But it was mine, every inch of it untouched by their hands. Outside, the streetlights cast soft, golden halos on the quiet sidewalk, the kind of calm that always came before a storm. I unlocked my laptop and dialed the second number. Lena picked up before the second ring. Callen, her voice was groggy. I checked the time. Midnight. I am sorry for the hour. If you are calling, it is not small, she said, instantly alert. I clicked open the folder on my desktop, labeled for when they cross the line. Then I dragged in the phone photos I had taken earlier that evening in my father's office, ledgers, handwritten checks, sloppy cash logs scrawled in blue pen. They have been siphoning donor funds through the foundation I said into Ellis's brand and Alden's Trainwreck startups. I could hear her sharp inhale. I just sent you the photos. I want you to start forensic matching, cross-check dates, deposits, vendor accounts. I want a full trail. Clicking, typing, silence. Callen, if this checks out, it is criminal. We are not talking about a slap on the wrist. I am not looking for slaps. I am looking for truth. She did not argue. I will start now. Expect a report by afternoon. I leaned back again, my shoulders finally touching the chair. I had not realized how long I had been sitting upright, like I was still at that dinner table. The third call was the shortest. I walked to the window and dialed Tamsin. She picked up with a sigh. This better be good. It is. I gave her the foundation's employer identification number. No context, just numbers. Then dropped the Dropbox link I had preloaded months ago containing backups, scans, flagged expenses, even security logs from my parents' office network. She did not ask questions, just said, you will get a subpoena confirmation within 48 hours. That was all. No good night. No thanks. I stayed at the window after the call. The glow of the city beyond Princeton was faint, quiet. My own reflection stared back at me, older than I remembered. Tired but not broken. I made tea. It was almost muscle memory now, chamomile. A drop of honey, the blue mug with a chipped handle I refused to replace. While the kettle hissed, my mind wandered back. 2 years ago, the house still smelled like antiseptic and roses from the Get Well bouquets. My mother had been in recovery after a rough abdominal surgery, and I'd flown back from Boston to take care of her. My father had barely been home. Alden was in Vegas. Ellis only stopped by for Instagram photos. So it was me. Me, the daughter they forgot, the one changing her dressings, making bone broth, helping her in and out of bed. And while she slept, I had access passwords, filing cabinet signature stamps. At the time, I did not think I would ever use it. I just archived it like someone taping up emergency glass behind a wall just in case. They never even noticed. Now the kettle clicked off. I poured the tea, sat at the small table by the bookshelf, and watched the steam curl upward like a dancer with no audience. I did not feel rage. Not anymore. That was the old me. Rage was loud. Rage was messy. This was something else. They wanted a scapegoat, someone to humiliate someone, to point at and say, "See, this is what happens when you step out of line." They wanted the silent daughter to stay silent. Well, I would be. But now silence would be my weapon. I took one last sip, closed the laptop, and whispered to the empty room. Now we wait. 27 hours later, the family's accounts were frozen and the calls began pouring in. I was in my kitchen stirring a small pot of oatmeal when the first one came in. The screen lit up with Callen in bold letters. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "There is a problem with the trust," he said, skipping even a hello. The quarterly transfer did not go through. I called the bank. They said it has been flagged. "Can you check?" His voice was not panicked yet, just impatient, like a man accustomed to things working the way he expects. I did not answer right away. I spooned the oatmeal into a bowl, added a pinch of cinnamon, and walked to the table before replying. No. There was a beat of silence. "What do you mean, no?" I said calmly, "I am not going to check. You will have to figure it out another way. You have power of attorney, and I am using it." I hung up. The second call came before I had even taken a bite. Olden voicemail, then another and another. By the fourth one, my phone buzzed so hard it rattled against the wooden tabletop. I did not listen right away. I finished eating first. Then I poured myself some coffee, sat back, and finally pressed play. "You think you are clever," he growled, voice half choked with rage. "You think cutting off the money makes you powerful. We made you Callen. We fed you. We gave you everything. Next message. This is what you wanted, is it not? You always wanted to destroy us. Well, now you have. Are you proud?" Then silence for maybe 2 hours. I spent that time reviewing some invoices. Lena had flagged dates that aligned a little too neatly with Ellis's sponsorship fund. It was always labeled under event outreach, right? Outreach to the florist, the venue, and a champagne tasting in Montauk. At 11:23 a.m., Ellis called. The ringtone barely rang once before I hit mute. I watched her name fade into missed call, then a voicemail. She sounded breathless. Not the spoiled defiance I was used to. This was full-blown panic. They said the payment did not go through. The venue called me. Callen me, not dad, not mum, me. You knew how important this was. You knew how long I have planned this. In the background, I could hear a man's voice shouting something. Probably Reed, her fiancé. He did not sound thrilled. I waited. She kept going. "Do you even care what this does to me, or are you just cruel?" I did not respond. I just typed one line into our old family group chat: "The trust was never yours to spend." Scene. No reply. By early afternoon, Lena texted, confirmed the venue florist catering deposits, all from the foundation's secondary account, frozen. Not long after Tamsin chimed in, "Vendors are backing out." Words spreading. One of them posted in the Hudson Valley Wedding Planner Forum. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the small watercolor above my desk, a girl walking into a forest. No path, just snow and space and silence. There was a kind of satisfaction settling over me. Not revenge, just clarity. Then came the call. "Mum." Vivian's name flashed on screen like a thunderclap. I stood up, poured water into the kettle just to keep my hands busy, and answered. Her voice was cold, controlled. "You humiliated me." I did not flinch. "No," I said softly. "You did that all by yourself. You ruined your sister's wedding." "No," I repeated. "You allowed her to steal from a charitable trust, and now the system did what it is meant to do. I did not hack anything. I did not break laws. I just let truth catch up." She went quiet, but not because she understood. "You were always difficult, Callen, so correct, so obsessed with doing things the hard way. You just do not understand family." "Maybe not your kind," I replied. I ended the call. This time I did not even feel my heart race. The day slipped toward evening. I worked quietly, folded laundry, lit a small vanilla candle. Outside, the first snowflakes began falling. Soft, slow, like someone above had taken pity and was tucking the world under a blanket. I stood by the window, mug in hand, and watched. For a second, I saw myself 12 years old, sitting in the back seat of Alan's car, while Ellis tried on pageant dresses. Alden had made fun of my shoes. I had bought them with my own allowance. "You could try being less weird," he had said. Dad did not even glance up from his phone. And me, I laughed like it was funny, like if I agreed with them just enough, I would belong. That girl was gone. This woman did not need their approval. She did not need an invitation to a wedding paid for with stolen funds. My thoughts were interrupted by another call. No name, no number blocked. I let it ring twice, then answered. A quiet breath on the other side. Then a familiar voice said, "Callen, I have something you need to hear about your father." I recognized the voice before she said her name. "Callen, it is Marcia. I worked with your Aunt Francine back then." My hand tightened around the phone. I had not heard that name in years. Aunt Francine had died under what they had called natural causes a decade ago. The only one who had ever stood up to my father and then quietly vanished from every family photo and conversation after her funeral. "I kept something Marcia said. She asked me to. I think it is time you heard it. She did not give more over the phone, only told me to meet her at the Newark County Records Building, 4th floor back archive room at 4:30 sharp. I left the house without finishing my tea. The drive was grey. Wet roads, moody clouds, just enough drizzle to make the world feel quiet and suspicious. The kind of weather that makes your windshield wipers squeak like a lie being scrubbed clean. The Records Building was nearly empty that time of day. The 4th floor smelled like old paper and ghosted bureaucracy. I found the archive room door slightly ajar, and there she was. Marcia looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. Her grey hair pulled into a tight knot. Her eyes flicked up and softened. "You came," she said, almost surprised. "You sounded serious." She nodded and walked to a filing cabinet, opened a hidden panel behind it, and pulled out a small manila envelope. "This was Francine's insurance," she whispered, "in case something ever happened to her, or in case they tried to erase her." Inside was a thumb drive. Plain, no label, no markings. She pressed it into my hand like it was burning. "Keep it off Wi-Fi. Trust me." I stared at her. "What is on it?" Marcia did not answer right away. Then she said, "Proof of who your father really was. Have you ever discovered something about your family that shattered everything you thought you knew? If you were in my place, would you expose them or keep quiet? Comment number 1, if you choose truth." By the time I got home, it was nearly 7. I turned off my phone, closed the blinds, and sat down at the kitchen counter with my old laptop. No internet, no Bluetooth, just the bare machine and the drive. I hesitated before plugging it in. The file was labeled 2011-0419 Francine Audio. I hit play. At first just static, then footsteps. A woman's voice, Francine's muttering something about the recorder, and then my father's voice. "So, here is the plan. We call it a family trust. Make it look clean. The girls' names go on the docs. That will keep it above board." Another voice. My mother's smooth, calculated. "And the IRS, they will be sniffing soon. You saw the audit timeline." Dad again. "We push the real assets through the construction shell, then tuck the money under the new trust. Only Alden gets the codes. We do not need the girls digging." A pause. Then a chuckle. "Callen will not even notice. She is too busy being noble. She will not ask questions." I stopped the playback. My breath caught like I had swallowed glass. They had not just excluded me. They had used me. My name, my identity, my silence. I was not the overlooked daughter. I was the decoy. I let the file play again. This time, all the way through. They spoke about forged documents, moving funds in chunks just under reportable limits, creating dummy invoices. My mother said something about a retirement home in Geneva. My father laughed, said he would bury the paperwork in plain sight. I sat there long after the file ended, staring at nothing. All these years, I thought I was just invisible. But no visibility was never the issue. They saw me, clearly saw exactly what they could get away with using me for. Eventually, I pulled out my folder with copies of the trust, the signatures. My name was there twice, except I had never signed. I checked the notary stamp, dated 2011. An old name I did not recognize. I called Merritt, my lawyer, and told him everything. He whistled low. Forgery, misappropriation of funds, wire fraud. This is enough to open a criminal investigation. And the notary retired in Florida. But if we can show a pattern, I want this exposed. He did not try to slow me down, just said, I will get the paperwork started. After the call, I sat back and tried to breathe. The room was dark except for the small light above the stove. I found myself staring at the bookshelf across the room. One of the spines caught my eye. A photo album. My 12th birthday. We were in the old house then. The one with the attic no one wanted to clean. That was where Francine used to hide her journals. I remembered climbing up there once trying to find a present she had hidden. That was when I heard Alan yell, not at me, but at Francine. You cross me again, and I will make sure you regret ever being part of this family. And Francine, she did not cry. She did not yell back. She just said Callen is going to see it all one day, and when she does, do not expect mercy. I had not understood it then, but I did now. Later that night, I dug deeper into the paperwork, cross-referenced dates, noticed a sudden change in the trust's language after 2011. Everything pointed to concealment, a wall of financial fog. But the line that kept echoing, only Alden gets the codes. They had locked me out from the start, and worse, they counted on me not fighting back. It was not just betrayal, it was strategy. A few minutes before midnight, I forwarded the audio file to 3 people. Merritt, an IRS contact I knew from a non-profit audit last year. And Ellis, she had been screaming about her wedding collapsing. She wanted to know why. Now she would know. 5 minutes later, a text blinked onto my screen from Ellis. Just 3 words. What the hell? I had not even set the laptop down when the doorbell rang. Not a light, polite press. It was fast, impatient, a jarring sound against the quiet thrum of my thoughts. I walked to the door, still gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, my fingertips cold. Through the peephole, I saw her. Ellis still in that stiff navy blazer she had worn at the last board meeting. Hair up but frayed, mascara smudged at the corners of her eyes, her knuckles white from clenching her phone. I opened the door without a word. She did not wait to be asked in. Just stepped across the threshold and held out her phone. Was that real? I did not answer right away. I did not need to, I only nodded. Ellis dropped her arm slowly like it had been holding something heavier than it looked. She leaned back against the wall near the coat rack, her breath shaky. They told me you left because you were selfish, she whispered. Said you did not want to be part of the family, that you thought you were better than us. I closed the door behind her. No, I said quietly. I left because I knew something was wrong. I just did not have proof until now. She did not speak, just stood there, eyes darting around my small kitchen, like she could not quite believe where she was. Like she had stepped into a world she had always avoided. I did not know, she said, finally, voice cracking. I mean, I knew things did not add up, but I thought I was imagining it. I motioned toward the dining table. She sat stiffly, like the chair might collapse under the weight of the past. We sat in silence for a few moments, her elbows resting on the table palms over her face. They always told me, she began, not looking up, that you were different. Mom told me when I was 14, Callen is not like us. She is adopted in spirit. Do not ever trust her with real things. I did not even know what that meant. Then my heart clenched, but I kept my face still. That is why you stopped telling me anything. She looked up, her face flushed. I thought I was protecting the family. They made it sound like you were dangerous, disloyal, and when you left they said you had taken money, that you were angry because you were not named in the first trust. I let out a soft laugh, tired, bitter. I did not even know there was a trust until last year. Ellis looked like she had been slapped. She rubbed her forehead hard, like she could scrub the memory away. I thought I was the favorite, but now I do not think they ever loved me. Not really, I was just useful. She paused, then said I thought I was the face of the family. Turns out, I was the mask they wore to keep their secrets. I watched her unravel, and for a moment, I did not feel angry. I just felt sad for both of us. You still have a choice, I said quietly. You can keep pretending none of this happened, or you can help me bring it all to light. Ellis looked at me, eyes glassy. How I need you to sign an affidavit that you heard them talk about the trust, especially what Alan said, that you knew the version I received was not the one that was actually signed. We will file it with the investigation. Ellis hesitated. That would make me part of it. I would be exposed. I nodded. But you will also be free. She looked down at her phone. Her fingers hovered over it for a moment, then slowly set it face down on the table. I am done protecting monsters, she said. Whatever you need, I will sign it. I exhaled slowly. My shoulders had been tensed so long I had not even realized it. We did not say anything else for a while, just sat there like two women waking from the same bad dream. Eventually I got up to pour us both a glass of water. When I set hers down, she was staring off toward the bookshelf. I followed her gaze. You remember the attic? She asked. I blinked. At the 10-fly house. Yeah, when we were kids. You had that stuffed fox. What did you name it? Marble. Marble the fox. He was missing one eye. She smiled faintly. You used to bring him up there with snacks, and I would sneak in with a flashlight. We made a whole secret sister club. You remember I do, I said. You made me promise you would never marry anyone unless he passed our code test. She laughed, but it cracked halfway through, and I promised I would always have your back. She looked down again. I guess I broke that. I did not say anything. I just reached across the table and rested my hand near hers. She did not pull away. The moment passed quiet and fragile. Then her phone buzzed, vibrating against the wood. She picked it up and froze. What is it? I asked. She looked up slowly. You might want to sit down. I did not move. Alan just filed an emergency motion in court, she said. He is trying to block access to the trust. Says you are a security threat to the estate. I stood up. Not fast, not dramatic, but deliberate. My mind did not race, but my hands, they curled into fists, not in fear, but in readiness. It was time for the hearing. We arrived at the courthouse just before noon. A quiet drizzle had started. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make the sidewalks gleam and the world feel slightly colder than it really was. I stepped out of the car, briefcase in hand, and followed my attorney through the side entrance reserved for scheduled hearings. No reporters, not yet. The marble floors of Bergen County Courthouse were polished to a near-mirror shine. The halls echoed faintly with footsteps and the muted murmur of legal staff moving between rooms. Inside courtroom B, the temperature felt artificially cool, like the air had been stripped of any warmth. Fitting considering who was sitting across from me. My father wore a charcoal grey suit, darker than usual, with a red tie so perfectly knotted it looked like a warning. My mother sat beside him in cream and pearls, stiff-backed and unmoving. She did not look at me. Alden sat on the other side, arms folded, jaw clenched, like it was wired shut. Their lawyer, a man named Gregory Lang, adjusted his silver cufflinks and gave me a long, polished smile that did not reach his eyes. We took our seats. The judge, a stern woman in her early 60s, named Judge Noelle Harrow, entered, robes brushing the polished floor. This is an emergency motion filed by Mr. Alan Rhodes to reverse the court-ordered freeze on the Rhodes Family Trust, she said, voice clipped and clear. All parties present, Gregory stood. Yes, Your Honor, and with your permission, I would like to begin. Proceed. He adjusted his tie and stepped forward, hands folded at his waist. Your Honor, the court has been led astray by a series of emotionally charged claims made by Mrs. Callen Rhodes, who, while intelligent, has a documented history of emotional instability stemming from a traumatic adolescence. This recent action, freezing the family's trust, was not only impulsive but retaliatory. She is acting from a place of vengeance, not justice. I felt my attorney Tamsin shift beside me, calmly unshaken. Gregory continued, the trust Your Honor has provided for multiple generations of Rhodes. To paralyze it based on a single heir's accusations without full evidence or due process risks severe financial harm. We request the immediate lifting of the freeze and reinstatement of Mr. Alan Rhodes as sole trustee. He stepped back, smug and composed. Judge Noelle Harrow turned to us. Tamsin, your response? She stood. Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Rhodes would like to speak directly to the court. The judge nodded. I rose slowly, aware of the silence, the way even the court reporter paused just slightly as I took the stand. My heels clicked softly on the tile, a steady rhythm. I was sworn in, sat down, and looked directly at the judge. When I froze the trust, it was not because I was angry, I said. It was because I finally had proof. I paused, letting the words settle into the air. For years, I questioned why documents did not match, why my name was left off key financial decisions despite promises, why my father's signatures kept appearing and mine did too, even when I had never signed anything. I suspected fraud, but I did not act because suspicion is not proof. I looked at Gregory, then at my father. Now I have more than suspicion. Tamsin walked to the front and handed a thick file to the clerk. Your Honor, she said, we are submitting 2 key pieces of evidence. First, a set of trust documents bearing Ms. Rhodes's forged signature compared to notarized samples from prior filings. Second, an audio file. In this recording, Mr. Rhodes is heard explicitly discussing financial misrepresentation, including concealing funds under his daughter's names to bypass IRS scrutiny. The judge raised an eyebrow. You have the audio, we do. It was obtained legally through a phone call with a witness who has since submitted an affidavit. Judge Noel Harrow leaned slightly forward. Play it. The courtroom went still. A tech assistant rolled in a small speaker and pressed play. There it was. My father's voice, clear and unhurried. We will move the rest under Ellis's name. She does not ask questions. Callen's too nosy. We will tell her she is not part of the succession. Make it about her attitude. Keep her out. If the IRS looks, we are clean on paper. Alden's voice chimed in, faintly laughing. You are ruthless. And then my father again chuckling. No, I am careful. No one breathed. The courtroom held its breath like a single body. Even Gregory's fake composure cracked. He blinked, his jaw shifting tight. My mother, Vivian, stared at the floor. Alden leaned back, pale. The judge looked straight at my father. Mr. Rhodes, is that your voice? My father hesitated. That could have been yes or no. Yes, but she cut him off. That is sufficient. The room remained silent except for the sound of the judge scribbling a note. Judge Noel Harrow turned to the clerk. Motion denied. The freeze on the Rhodes Family Trust remains in full effect. Furthermore, I am referring this matter for immediate review by federal authorities under suspicion of financial fraud and perjury. Mr. Alan Rhodes, Mrs. Vivian Rhodes, and Mr. Alden Rhodes are to provide full disclosure within 7 business days. Gregory tried to stand, but the judge raised her hand. This is not a negotiation. Court adjourned. The gavel struck like a gunshot. I stood gathering my coat, keeping my movements steady. Behind me, I heard my father rise abrupt, angry. I was halfway to the hallway when his voice came sharp and low behind me. You think you have won, I stopped, turned and looked him straight in the eye. No, I said. I think I have begun. He said nothing. His mouth opened, then shut. His fists clenched at his sides, but there was nothing left to say. Not in that room, not today. Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds had not cleared yet, but there was a lightness in the air that had not been there before, the kind that comes just before the storm breaks for good. I did not say another word. I just walked. The first knock came 2 days later at exactly 7:36 in the morning. The sun had barely lifted above the line of trees in Tenafly, the sky a dull grey, like it had not decided if the day deserved light or not. From inside the Rhodes estate, it must have seemed like just another Thursday calm, silent, insulated from the consequences that had been knocking long before this morning. Then came the second knock, firmer, and then the doorbell held down long enough to signal this was not some neighbor returning a misdelivered package. Alden was the first to reach the front door. He opened it to a cluster of people in navy windbreakers. Crisp and impersonal. IRS Federal Enforcement Division. One of them said, holding up a badge before Alden could say a word, "We have a warrant." Behind them, a line of agents stepped forward in quiet coordination, some with rolling cases, others with clear plastic bins. One carried a handheld scanner, another had gloves already on. They moved like they had done this countless times before because they had. I was not there, of course. I was in Princeton, standing in my kitchen reheating yesterday's coffee and staring out at the backyard fence when my phone buzzed. It was Merritt. No text, just a photo. A close-up shot of cardboard evidence boxes being wheeled down the front steps of the Rhodes house, each labeled with printed tags. Trust 14C, Holdings 1996-2020. Road/Alden Digital Archives. I did not smile. I just whispered, "You opened this door." I just held the mirror. Back in Tenafly, panic had already broken loose inside. Alden's wife let out a sharp scream when agents entered the hallway and headed toward the study. I was told she stood frozen for a second, then burst into loud sobs before locking herself in the downstairs guest room. Their mother, pale and shaking in her silk robe, collapsed into the living room sofa and let out a faint cry for smelling salts like she was performing for an invisible audience. One of the agents offered her a glass of water. She did not take it. And my father, he marched down the stairs, still half-dressed, and demanded loudly, and with the false confidence of a man too used to being obeyed, that everyone stop this nonsense and get the family attorney on the line immediately. The lead agent, a middle-aged woman with iron-straight posture, handed him the warrant calmly. "This is a federal investigation, sir. You can contact counsel, but the search proceeds." He did not like that. Apparently he stood there for a good 20 seconds, lips pressed so tight they disappeared. Then he stepped aside, muttering something about witch hunts and media vultures. In Alden's office, things turned quiet and surgical. Cabinets were opened. USB drives labeled consulting were bagged. His laptop was imaged and returned. Paperwork was photographed and logged before being boxed. Then, one of the younger agents, while sifting through a heavy wooden filing cabinet, tapped something metallic at the back panel. It sounded hollow. He paused, slid the entire row of files aside, and there it was, a small compartment built into the back wall of the cabinet. Inside, tucked neatly beside an old cigar case, was a black leather notebook, soft-worn like it had been handled often. No title, just a wraparound strap. They unbound it carefully. Every page was handwritten. Dates, amounts, routing numbers, abbreviations, and something else. Names not full ones, just codes, but they were unmistakable. M001, S91, L73, birth. Months and years, family birth dates. Mine, Ellis's, Alden's, transfers to offshore accounts, movements between dummy trusts. It was not clever. It was arrogant. When the agent showed it to Alden, he tried to laugh. "That is just notes for tax planning," he said. "Everyone keeps notes." The agent did not blink. "Then you can explain it to the prosecutor." Hours later, the house had been swept clean of its secrets. The agents left with 12 boxes, 2 hard drives, and 1 black notebook that now sat at the center of a growing case. I learned all this in pieces. Texts, calls, whispers from former staff who still had loyalties that did not belong to my parents. But what stayed with me most was not the files or the screaming or even the knock. It was Ellis. She did not call, she just showed up. Around 6:40 that evening, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, she was standing there in jeans and a navy sweater holding a ceramic casserole dish in her hands. The kind you bake for someone when there has been a death or a confession. She looked tired, but there was something else too, a resignation that I had not seen on her face in years. "I made lasagna," she said quietly. "It was your favorite back then." I stepped aside. "Come in." We ate at the kitchen table in near silence. No music, no TV, just the clink of forks and the hum of the refrigerator. At one point, I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out an old photo creased and slightly faded around the edges. It was from one of our sleepovers as kids, back when Ellis still wore glasses far too big for her face, and we built blanket forts in the living room. I placed it carefully between us on the table. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "Do you think she ever loved either of us?" I did not have an answer, but she looked at me again, this time with tears forming. "I asked her that today," she added. I leaned back, listening. She slapped me. Ellis said, voice flat, just like she used to. "And you?" I asked. I did not move. I just turned around and left. We finished the lasagna. No leftovers remained. She stayed until almost 9 o'clock. Then she stood, thanked me softly, and left without asking for anything. That night, just before I went to bed, I checked the mailbox. It was late past 10, but something told me to go. Inside was a single envelope, certified, cream-colored, no return address printed. But in the corner, handwritten in a shaky but familiar script, were 5 words, "To the rightful heir BD." I stared at it for a moment. Heartbeat slow but steady. Then I closed the door, turned off the porch light, and held it against my chest. Whatever came next was not theirs to steal anymore. I did not even make it to the kitchen. I stood in the hallway, the envelope trembling in my hands. When I slid my finger under the seal, I expected bank statements, maybe legal threats. But instead, what fell out first was something smaller, thicker than a page, a USB drive. I froze. Then I turned the envelope upside down, and a folded letter slipped out. Handwritten in my grandfather Walter's unmistakable script, those slow looping strokes that used to sign my report cards with a smiley face. It smelled faintly of pipe smoke and cedar, like the cabin he always loved more than people. The first words stopped me cold. If you are reading this, Callen, then you have already proven stronger than I ever was. I sank onto the armrest of the couch without thinking, the letter shaking slightly as I held it close enough to read every word. He wrote of regrets, how he had watched year after year, the way my parents clipped my wings while telling me they were sheltering me, how they pitted us against each other, Alden Ellis me as if our worth was a finite resource, how he had wanted to intervene but feared tearing the family apart like silence was a form of protection. But then came the truth. He had never intended for my parents to control his estate. He had seen them manipulate wills, pressure trustees, spin stories to suit themselves. So he created a separate provision, one that bypassed all of them entirely. You will find it enclosed in the files my lawyer was instructed to deliver only upon clear evidence of wrongdoing. His script became shakier near the end. I may be gone when you read this, but know this. Everything I built in Vermont, all of it is yours. Not because of blood, but because you saw people clearly and still chose to be kind. Because you did not need power to act with strength. He ended with a line I had not read in decades, something he used to whisper when tucking me into the cabin's bunk beds during summer storms. Build something that lasts longer than anger. I set the letter down and stared at the flash drive. My fingers hesitated over the laptop, but I clicked it in. The screen stayed black for a second. Then he appeared. My grandfather in a worn wool cardigan seated in front of the Vermont fireplace. A small clock behind him read 2016. He looked right into the lens, as if he knew I would be on the other side one day. If you are watching this, kiddo, he said, his voice lower than I remembered, then they have done what I feared they would. I did not blink. I am sorry I did not stop it sooner, but you stood up. You made them show who they were, and that takes more guts than I ever had. He coughed once, leaned forward slightly. I saw what they did to you, how they cut you out, made you small, blamed you when they were afraid of what you might grow into. But I knew better. I always did. So I left instructions, real ones. They will try to fight it, but the letter and this recording are legally notarized. The Vermont Trust, the land, the cabin, it is yours. Always was. He leaned back, sighing. Build something with your name on it. Something that does not erase who you are. Do not spend your life proving them wrong. Just live like you were right all along. The screen faded to black. I did not cry. I just sat there for a long while, heart full, but still steady. By morning, I called my attorney. We filed the letter and the video into the court proceedings. Within 3 weeks, the judge ruled in my favor. The main trust my parents had tried to use was declared fraudulent. My grandfather's instructions were recognized as binding, irrevocable, impossible to overturn. My phone lit up with news alerts later that day. Rhodes Family Trust invalidated in court. Local financier faces IRS scrutiny over alleged estate fraud. There was a photo of my father shielding his face from a camera and another of Alden outside what used to be his firm, now shuttered. Ellis was not in any of them. I did not post a statement, did not tweet, did not give a quote to the one journalist who somehow got my number, because silence when it comes from the one they dismissed echoes louder than rage. 3 weeks later, I drove up to Vermont. The road curved in familiar rhythms, the trees dense and rustling like they remembered me. When I reached the cabin, the key still fit like no time had passed. Inside, everything was just as he left it. Wood piles, stacked flannel blankets, folded his favorite mug resting on the windowsill. I lit the fireplace, took out the letter, and placed it above the mantel under a small brass lantern that used to guide us home on foggy nights. It flickered gently, casting soft light across the stone hearth. This was mine now, not in the way of ownership, but in the way of roots. Weeks passed. I registered the Vermont Trust in my name. I converted a portion into a foundation, a quiet one named in his honor. It offered financial literacy workshops, legal navigation tools, and small grants for young women with complicated family histories, women like me. Ellis joined without being asked. She did not want her name on anything. Said she would just make spreadsheets and stir the soup at meetings. But every time I looked at the attendance rosters or donation logs, I saw her notes in the margins. Gentle, thoughtful, never looking for credit. We never talked about the slap or the lasagna. We just moved forward like you do when healing has no dramatic music, only small, steady days that finally stop hurting. Now and then someone from Tenafly would email a distant cousin, an old teacher, a housekeeper who remembered when I used to leave thank you notes in the laundry room. I responded kindly but never went back. And now when people ask how I managed to survive all that, I tell them this. Sometimes you will not get the apology. You will not hear the words you deserved. Sometimes they will not even admit what they did. But if you live in truth, whether it is loud or quiet or whispered through court papers, your peace will grow louder than their cruelty ever was. So no, I did not break the family. I simply stopped letting it break me. Because in the end, this is not about revenge. It is about freedom, about reclaiming the voice they tried to silence, about planting something that lasts longer than anger. And maybe that is the real inheritance, not the land, not the trust, but the choice to live whole. If you have ever carried wounds from family and found your way forward, I would love to hear how you did it. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. I am listening. And if this touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell if you want to hear more. Drop this phrase in the comments. Choose freedom as a declaration for yourself. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself and never forget you deserve a life built on truth, not fear.